out and so on, and give you a little picture of Chalmer's Brigade, because that's who we're going to be talking about obviously as we go through. James Chalmers, you probably read up a little bit about him, don't know. He was born in Virginia, moved to South Carolina, and then moved on to Mississippi. He's a kind of, I'd describe him as a jack of all trades. He is a lawyer, and like a lot of lawyers during that time that make their fortune in the law, they start dabbling in other areas. He's a planter. He owns 40-something slaves, I believe, in 1860 in DeSoto County. So he makes his money in planting and law, and of course all of those then start dabbling in politics. So he's a politician as well. He gets himself elected to the Mississippi Secession Convention, actually, and he plays he's a military guy as well. He's commander of militia company in DeSoto County. Actually, at the Secession Convention, and this really doesn't mean anything, it's kind of interesting, he is chairman of the Convention Military and Naval Affairs Committee. At the same time, he is chairman of the State Militia Board, which the Militia Board wants to name all the state's generals, and the Secession Convention wants to name all the state's generals. So he's on both of those, and he kind of has to be very careful going back and forth. He actually chairs both of those at one point, so he's kind of in a tight area. He skips the March session of the convention because he's already in the Army. He's colonel of the 9th Mississippi, which is going to wind up in his brigade here. And he'll be down at Pensacola, and then of course in the Confederate concentration after the fall of Fort Henry. They will move forward, and he'll be appointed a brigadier general, and he will then command the brigade here at Shiloh. Now the different regiments, there are 4 Mississippi regiments in the brigade here, and then 1 Tennessee regiment. We're not really going to talk about the Tennessee. Started calling them rabble, that's what people refer to them. But the 52nd Tennessee really doesn't do much here. Is not very involved, so we probably won't talk about those much. B.J. Lee is their colonel. He loses his horse early on, and you just don't hear much about them. There are a couple other Tennessee regiments that I found reference to being attached to them. The 51st Tennessee is also, they were later consolidated during the war actually, but the 51st Tennessee is left at Corinth because they have no arms. They're not armed, so they're left at Corinth. I found reference to the 1st Tennessee. This is Maney's 1st Tennessee. Those 5 companies that are with Maney here, the others are in Chattanooga, were also at one point attached to Chalmers Brigade, but on the morning, I believe the morning of April 6th, Johnston detaches Maney and sends them to Stevens Brigade so that Maney will outrank Stevens, who is sick. But then Maney gets sent down to Lick Creek and all that. So it's kind of topsy-turvy there for just a little while. But the 4 Mississippi regiments are the main ones that are going to do the fighting. And I actually call these the hardest fighting Confederate brigade at Shiloh, and really the hardest fighting any brigade of either side, I think, at Shiloh. Very quickly, the 5th Mississippi and the 7th Mississippi were part of the original Mississippi Board, military board regiments. There were 8 original regiments that were organized. The 5th and the 7th were part of those. The 5th, Colonel Albert Fant, mostly from the eastern central section of the state, Neshoba County, Winston County, those areas. The 7th Mississippi comes from South Mississippi, Amite County, Covington County down in there. Colonel Hamilton Mason, actually he's the lieutenant colonel, is in charge of that regiment. The 9th and the 10th are a little bit different. They're not military board regiments. They are the regiments that respond when Jefferson Davis calls for those 1,500 men early in the war. He calls for a certain number from each state, and the 9th and the 10th are organized out of companies, and of course Chalmers is one of the colonels of that. As a result, there is no colonel when Chalmers is booted up, and the colonel, or the lieutenant colonel at Shiloh here is Rankin, William E. Rankin. And then you've got the 10th Mississippi is Colonel Robert A. Smith, who you might have heard of later on, was killed at Munfordville in Bragg's Kentucky campaign and so on, native of Scotland. The 9th Mississippi is northern Mississippi, those northern tier counties, Marshall County, Tishomingo County is a company there, a couple from DeSoto County with Chalmers there. The 10th Mississippi is just from all over the state, Lowndes County, Warren County, Adams County, I think, so they're kind of a hodgepodge of all over the place. So that's just a little bit about those. One interesting thing I did find, then we're going to start off. The Mississippi Secession Convention, I mentioned that. Chalmers was there. There are quite a few others. There were 10 actually delegates that were in the Army at Shiloh, defending their state, defending their action of secession. And of those 10, most of them are concentrated, or 5 of them actually are concentrated in Bragg's Corps in Chalmers Brigade here. The company commander, Company E, 7th Mississippi, is Daniel Parker. The colonel, or lieutenant colonel of the 7th Mississippi is Hamilton Mason. They were both at the convention. There's a captain in the 5th Mississippi named John Herring from Pontotoc County, who is, of course, in the 5th Mississippi. And then you've got Chalmers, and then you've got a staff officer on Bragg's staff, dealing with, the Corps and so on. That's Harvey Walter out of Marshall County. So 5 of the 10 delegates to the Mississippi Convention are in Chalmers Corps or staff officer related to those. And I think it's kind of interesting. Company E of the 7th Mississippi is just inundated with these secession convention members because their captain, their regimental commander, their brigade commander, and a staff officer on their corps commander's staff are all delegates to the convention. That's neither here nor there. Just thought that was kind of interesting. Where are we here? Well, if you look, the tablet here, Bragg's line of battle, Saturday, April the 6th. Right of Gibson's brigade, it will angle out, and if you see they're kind of angled here because the Confederate line is angled somewhat. They will run over to Highway 22. In fact, there's supposed to be a tablet over on Highway 22 denoting Gibson's brigade. This is the left of Jackson's brigade, which will angle farther to the west. Of course, Chalmers' brigade will actually be on the right of Jackson's brigade, farther on down. And I actually tinkered, Mono, with the idea. We've gotten a lot of permissions from landowners. We're going to be off the park a lot today. And I actually thought about talking to this guy. I don't know if you know him or not. He owns a big, huge section of land back in here. And I thought about us going down in there and so on, but there's nothing really to see down there, and there's nothing really, we'd have to go down there and then just trudge through the woods. And there wasn't any fighting down there or anything, so I really didn't think it was necessary. We'll spend our majority of our time where we get most bang for the buck kind of thing. So, but the reason we start here is that this is Bragg's line, and Chalmers' brigade would have been. This is the line that they would have been on, so this is as good a starting point as over there to get distances and so on. But they would have been one brigade over to the right there, and thus would start angling in. This is the Bark Road, just at the top of the hill. What you see right up here is where Bragg's headquarters was, where the famous Council of War takes place on the night of April the 5th and all of that. Explain to you just a little bit of where we're going and how we're going to do this on the Bark Road. If you let me hold my map here for a second. You can see these tablets right here. There you go. See the tablets right there. And now there's really no way to tell exactly, in the exact footsteps of Chalmers' brigade. In fact, if we went down in this area, Chalmers' brigade would probably be right down in here. So when they're going to move forward, whether they came on the Bark Road, we're probably maybe not in the exact footsteps, but well, maybe not that far, maybe right in here. But they're in the vicinity of the Bark Road, and we're going to move forward. And what we're going to do probably, when we get to the Bark Road, we're going to go off land, off the road here, and go through kind of some of the new area that Civil War Trust actually has bought recently, and then we're going to go over into this area, actually this area down in here, and attack through Locust Grove Branch the way Chalmers did. So there's really no way, and the report is not real clear. Let me read to you kind of what he says. I'm going to be reading periodically from the report. Whether they move in line of battle or exactly what, if anybody or tactics. He's right, they're moving on.
Yeah, they fly through here.
That is, they move forward as ordered that the supporting line should move by the right of companies to the front. So it sounds like to me they're moving by column instead of in the line of battle. And if they move by column, obviously they're going to move on the road more than just through the woods. So it's hard sometimes to kind of figure these things out. But that's our plan of battle for right now. We're going to move some on the road and then some in through the field. But it'll give you a general idea in terms of distances, how far we're moving and so on. And all right. Any questions or anything? Very good.
Thank you. Thank you. My name's Billy Board.
Billy
Board.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Bill Board?
Bill Board.
The sign.
Yeah, board.
I was watching on, what was it, Fox News, I think, the guy Bill doing the election night coverage and all that. They named the touchscreen, all that, the Billboard.
The billboard.
All right, everybody ready?
Well, I bet you never heard that one before. Jokes out like me and Quaker Roach, I grew up with it.
So much for original.
Big giant race, inner tube race. they'll get energy when they race down the river. And then the music class follows behind all the kids and stuff, and I follow them, I find people pick up all the kids.
It's really careful, and you may have to find you a good place to sit. You can see the ruins of the old Pine Lodge Hotel. One of you was talking about the book on the history of the park. I don't remember.
Yeah.
Is that you remember about the Pine Lodge Hotel that DeLong Rice in the 1920s built, and he sold lots, and it was going to be this big, huge money-making venture and all that big, huge thing. You can see the ruins just right through the woods there. That's where it was. Had swimming pools and all that. The governor bought a lot and all that. You can maybe see it a little better. Yeah, you can see it a little better right down here. It's better when the leaves aren't here, obviously, but that's the Pine Lodge Hotel.
You got like those 3 pines in a row. Look just to the right.
Oh yeah. 100 yards. Okay.
There's nothing out there now.
Okay. Yeah, it's way back. I can't even pick it up.
Watch out for the mean dogs up here, and then she went back to the back. So
I
think
went to go
that
tell
is-
them.
I better get it. She got a stick, so y'all better.
Now, those right there, and then at the next curve, there's some pit bulls.
Oh, there's some mean ones now. Okay. All right. Stop here just to show you a little bit of terrain features. I'm firmly convinced that the 2 key elements of Union victory here at Shiloh are Ulysses S. Grant and the terrain. And you get a little bit of idea of the terrain here. Of course, you see it dropping off here. We're on the highest ground, pretty much this elevated ridge on the south side of the Bark Road is pretty much the highest terrain. Yeah, here comes a car. Well, here came a car. Everything is going to kind of slope to the north toward Pittsburgh Landing and Snake Creek, and of course there's going to be that divide in the middle, the ridge that goes all the way really from this ridge. It kind of makes a T almost, with the top of the T, an inverted T, I guess, being south of the Bark Road, and then the shank going down to Pittsburgh Landing. Of course, it will widen and narrow according to the creeks and so on, Dill Branch and Tillman Branch and so on. But we're standing on the highest elevation. It's where the Confederate Army deploys, of course, and they basically have a downhill trudge to attack the Union forces, and you can see it dropping off on the other side. Let's go attack the dog.
One line, pay them no mind. They're just federal reconnaissance troops. Everybody knows.
Here, or we actually started here, but Chalmer started about here and generally moved in this direction. We were on the Bark Road. We veered off about right here. You see where the park now reaches down to the Bark Road right here, and so we're generally about right here, and we're going to move across the land something similar to this, and hopefully come out on this little nook right here. We'll have to hit it just right. If we wander over into private land, maybe we'll try not to. That's definitely something we don't want to do. So generally, if Chalmers is moving something like this or something like this, we're going to be in the same basic area that he was. He's going to wind up, of course, right here, which we're going to cross over, and we do have permission to be on this private land. So we're going to move across this newest areas of park. So if any of you members of the Civil War Trust and so on, that's been an instrumental part down in here. You can see it a little better. Let's turn yeah, there we go, the map over. Here is Chalmers right here, and he is on, of course, the left of Gladden, kind of the left rear of Gladden. So if he's moving forward Bark Road, generally we're right here again, and we're in the same basic area, and Chalmers winds up right here. So we're following pretty much in the footsteps. Let me tell you kind of what he's talking about. In this order, we commenced the march early on the morning of the 6th. Space between Owl Creek and Lick Creek was about half a mile narrower when we first deployed our line of battle than it was in front of the enemy's line. As the space between General Gladden's left and Lick Creek increased as we advanced, it became necessary that my brigade should move up into the front line on the right of General Gladden, and that's when he's going to move up, which was done. And being now in the front line, skirmishers from each regiment were at once thrown forward. And so advanced by a gradual left wheel, and then he lists his commanders and so on. When within about 150 yards of the enemy line, that's at Spain Field up there, so we'll stop and pick up on that in just a minute. All right, let's pick our way through. It's an older map. His map has the new land that's owned by the park. This one has a little bit of the older, but you can see vividly this corner here that we're about right here or so. And you can see here the wood line. That is the old border of the park, where the 16th Wisconsin was, Shaver's Brigade, and those tablets for Sweat's artillery, Smith's artillery. You remember last year we went in a circle? That was just right up in those woods right up in there. And then it makes an L, of course, and comes south here, and you can see that wood line right there. So you can see the park vividly here. Excuse me, goodness, swallowed a bug or something. You can also see, it's a good area to see kind of the lowland up here, and there's a great account of Gladden's Brigade, Robertson's battery, Robertson's Alabama battery attached to Gladden's Brigade. As they're moving forward, Gladden actually halts the battery. He says in a Gladden doesn't say it, Robertson says it, in a lowland, in a creek, and shelters them. And they talk about how the bullets are already going over their heads and all that. And it's only later when Gladden is actually wounded that they bring Robertson's battery up, and that's when they go into action out there at Spain Field, of course, which we're going to kind of bypass to the east of Spain Field a little bit, but you can see the terrain just perfectly here, you know, in the lowland that we're going to see. This creek that we're going to go through, and just a little farther up is the watershed that they shelter Robertson's battery. And we need to come out on the park land again, so we are, of course, right in here, so we need to go up farther a little bit more and over. Been to all these areas, but maybe not the route that you're taking. Oh, man. Why aren't you leading now?
Crazy fixing to make a loop.
And the distances that the brigade travels the whole time, so I think we will be very...
Is the underbrush, is this like it was then, or do you know?
I was telling somebody else that normally it's large trees, first growth timber. 86 or so % of the battlefield is wooded. And normally the open range policy of the farmers, the cows and goats and all that, will eat it out. Now there will be pockets of places like this, of course, and you'll read that in several of the reports. Well, it might have been a former field where it was cut over. You know, this used to be a field and it's grown up really thick. Creek bottoms and so on, where they don't do, you know, much agriculture, and animals aren't going to go down, stand in water, you know, and so on, and eat stuff. So normally it's located in isolated areas, but there will be pockets of places like this. Did we lose? Oh, everybody?
Well, he does talk in his report about all the briars they go through.
Yeah, all the briars. Yeah, they're briars. Briars everywhere. All right. Hey, I got a funny story about that. Let me tell y'all. I made the students this semester read a book on the Battle of New Orleans, and Robert Remini's book. And I give them a book quiz. I used to give them a book review where they wrote a review of the book, but I found out they copied it off the internet, you know. So I give them a book quiz, and so one of them, I try to make the questions as general as I can, so that if they read the book, they don't have to remember specific names and all that, but they'll know what I'm talking about. But specific enough that if they didn't read the book, they'll have no idea what we're talking about. So one of them was like, describe the Battle of New Orleans, and you know, you describe the Rodriguez Canal and the earthworks and the rockets and all that. You can tell whether they read the book or not. But one of them wrote, and I gave him an A on this just simply for this. He wrote, in 1814 we took a little trip. he quoted the whole thing.
You think he did the real answer? I think he probably did that. I mean, he probably did. Does he know you? Or you just know you see what just going on?
No, well, no, it was inside.
Oh, just a couple of flags. That sounds like something one of us would do. Yeah. If we were in the class. Like, so it's fun. Anyway, I was giving some points to bravado.
Yeah, exactly. This is the Eastern Corinth Road. Now, if you look straight up the road, you probably can't even see it here, but Spain Field is farther to the front. And several times we've been back in there, I think over the last 3 years, I've talked about the headwaters of Locust Grove branch right back in here and so on. We're going to see that as we go today. Yeah, Brent, let's look on the map just to show people a good idea where we are.
Pointer.
Yeah, let me borrow that. You got the original dog getter. We are roughly right here where that little jut out joins the Eastern Corinth Road. Just to the north, of course, is one last in holding, which I'm sure the park would love to have. I don't know who owns it, but we're going to cross over. Excuse me. We've got 3 private landowners here, and we won't say names and so on since you're on the,
permission.
Video. Yeah, we've got permission from all 3, but we're going to cross into this area, go roughly east, and then head north. Again, Chalmer's route would be something similar to what we just made, right generally through this. Now, if they went on the road just a little bit or not, you know, we can't tell. He doesn't say anything about it. But generally in this route, and when they get here is when he starts talking about within 150 yards of the enemy line was halted, and heavy fire ensued, and so on. So that's going to be just south of Locust Grove Branch. So we're going to cross Locust Grove on private property, and when we get to about this point, we will turn and head north, following Chalmers' route, something like that. So, all right. Any questions or anything? All right. Let's get out. You can see, wouldn't this be a beautiful house place right here on this little wide area? I think we're right here, as best I can tell. So we're going to start our movement north and cross Locust Grove Branch, of course, and this would have been the area that Chalmers, by this point, let me read you some of what he's saying. In obedience to orders from General Withers, the right of this brigade was advanced by gradual left wheel, so that when we first encountered an enemy, we're marching in a northeast direction, as we've been doing, and met him in a line of battle in front of his first encampment on our right. That'll be the 18th Wisconsin, of course. When we arrived inside the line of battle was formed, yeah, that's where he says the line of battle was formed, and the brigade moved steadily forward in the following order, so and so, so and so, and so and so. So let's, we're fixing the interaction. We've done all that, and Henning started the fighting. All right, let's show them where we are. That is Spain Field right there. In fact, you see the NPS boundary marker, and then you see the sign there for the what would that be? The 61st Illinois, probably. What are you doing there, Mom?
Taking a dump out of it.
We are right at that corner right here where the park boundary goes that direction. We're going to move down just a little bit and go across Locust Grove Branch here and assault up the steep hill like they did, of course, and their tablet will be right at the hill, right at the top of the hill where the 18th Wisconsin is. Didn't we go through there last year when we were doing Johnston? That's where Johnston, of course, yeah, there, I remember. Let me read you a little bit about what Chalmer says, and you can keep that in mind when we make this attack. When within about 150 yards of the enemy line, the line was halted and heavy firing ensued, in which a number of our men were killed and wounded. Colonel Lee lost his horse. That's the 52nd Tennessee. After several rounds were discharged, the order to charge bayonets was given to the 10th Mississippi Regiment, about 360 strong, led by its gallant colonel, dashed up the hill and put to flight the 18th Wisconsin Regiment, numbering 1,000 men. The order to charge having been given from the right flank where I was stationed was not heard down the line. Consequently, the 10th Mississippi alone moved. The 9th and 7th and the 5th didn't go, and the 52nd, of course, didn't go either. And then they pursue them on. We've got a little more detail about this attack from the report of Colonel Robert A. Smith of the 10th Mississippi. If you look in the official records, the only report available for Chalmer's brigade is Chalmer's report itself. No regimental commander reports are in there. I found Robert Smith's partial report in the Mississippi Department of Archives and History, in Robert Smith's papers, and Mona's she's been trying to decipher it, and it's not terribly easy, and she wrote it out and had a whole lot of spaces in there and wanted me to fill in. I could fill in a lot of them. Unfortunately, yeah, that's a copy of it I made for her. There were holes in the page, some of the pages, and what you see on here is like the second or third page, you know, so it doesn't always make sense. But it says, this is 10th Mississippi. Shortly after 7 a.m., this line moved forward. We crossed the small creek alluded to above, and advancing by the right of companies, crossed beyond a small cabin on the roadsides back there, and ascending a steep hill beyond forming the crest, from which a point of platoon of skirmishers advanced to the front and right. This is probably somewhere near the crest of where they're talking about, or maybe back where we're talking about the house place. Back there. After short stand, we again advanced with the line obliquely slightly to the right and gradually changing direction to the left. We crossed several hills and deep ravines. The brigade inside of the left of the enemies at advancing down the hill. By the flank, we observed the rest forming upon their color line at a distance of about 150 yards. So we're synchronizing with Chalmers' report here. Somewhere he talks about his Licking Creek, his right on the, where is that? I just saw it. Something about his right was formed on a branch of Licking Creek, which is he's calling Lick Creek right here. Here it is, yeah. Our right was the right of the army, rested on a small branch of Licking Creek, which is some of the branches back here. All right, he gives a little more detail in terms of what happened when the rest of the brigade doesn't hear this order. He says, I formed the regiment in line of battle in this front under the brow of a slight hill. That's going to be where we go down in just a minute. And outside a small stream upon the side by a thick of patch briars. Patch of briars here, having received orders to charge the enemy, I ordered the men to divest themselves of their blankets and fix bayonets, instructing them that upon reaching the brow of the hill, a distance of about 60 yards from the enemy's line, I would order them to fire and then charge with the bayonet. We advanced through the briars by the right of companies in good order, but before the left could be cleared from the creek bottom, the enemy fired a volley at us. The men would not wait to form, but commenced firing, and with a loud cheer rushed upon the foe, who did not wait to rescue them, but broke their line and fled. We followed through the camp to the rear, firing upon the enemy, where they seeing a long line of encampment stretched to our left, not knowing the dispositions of the enemy, so and so and so and so. So a little detail about Robert Smith in the 10th Mississippi. Yeah, I got the pages mixed up there.
Tell me where we're at.
Oh yeah, okay. All right, so let's go down just a little bit farther to the east, and we'll track Chalmer's path across The 18th Wisconsin is part of Miller's Brigade Apprentices Division, and their camps are going to be on the north side of Spain Field over there. The 18th Wisconsin, 18th Missouri. Watch that anthill. And the 18th Wisconsin will be farther down the ridge north of Locust Grove Break, where their line here.
Are all apprentices regiments green?
Yes. All except the 25th Missouri which had seen a little bit of action in Lexington in Missouri earlier in the war. Have been captured and now they're back. But other than that, they fall off with I think it's because they didn't have ammunition. Who was I doing a tour for just last month? Oh, it was the United Kingdom Civil War Roundtable out of London. And one of those guys was a geologist or a whatever rock guy he is. And he was just absolutely fascinated with that kind of stuff. It's called some kind of, he went into all kind of detail about so-and-so and obsidian, Chalmer, and rubber, like whatever. And he wanted me to show an outcropping to him somewhere, you know, and he was just, it made his day that he saw, you know, what he was looking for. So, all right, we're at Chalmer's first tablet, so all that just to start into action here. And this is, what time does it say, 9 o'clock or so?
Yeah, 9 a.m.
9 a.m. The 3 regiments it talks about, the 7th, 9th, and 10th. The 5th doesn't get on here. Starting from the left, of course, you got the 10th, and then the, well, it's listed up there, 7th, 9th, and then the 5th and the 52nd will be farther to the left. And as Chalmer said, he's on the right of the brigade, and I'm wondering why he was on the right of the brigade, but I think he tells us, or Robert Smith tells us, our brigade being the right of the army, and our regiment being the right of the brigade means we're the extreme right of the army. So Chalmers is somewhat worried about keeping his connection with Lick Creek over there and plugging this gap that are, of course, his orders. So Chalmers is on the extreme right of the brigade, and when he gives the order to charge, as Smith talked about, you know, in the bottom of the hill down there, 150 yards or so, they were supposed to move up 60 yards or so, which is that 60 yards to the campsite. I mean, you can see the distance is just perfect here. And they didn't wait to the order to fire. They just commenced firing and moved rapidly onward. And they rout the 18th Wisconsin. Of course, that's the 18th Wisconsin camp in position just to the front there. The 18th Wisconsin, of course, as we talked about last year, where Albert Sidney Johnston comes a little bit later, 9:30ish, 10 o'clock or so, and directs the battle from that point. By this time, Chalmers' brigade has moved on across the next ravine to the next hill, which we're going to do. We're going to follow everything that they do. And they will actually encounter the lead elements, the skirmishers of Hurlbut's division, as they are moving forward to the rescue of this crisis that is emerging. They will actually move forward, and we'll talk about what happens to them a little bit farther forward. Let me see what Chalmers, if he has anything else to tell us here. Yeah, the 10th Mississippi moved along in the first charge, though it was quickly followed by the 9th and 7th. The whole line of the enemy broke and fled, pursued by these 3 regiments through their camps and across the ravine about a half a mile to the opposite hill, where they were halted by command of General Johnson. The 5th Mississippi and 52nd Tennessee, having been left behind in the charge, were moved up to their position. The 5th Mississippi is now placed next to the 10th Mississippi, so they move around to the extreme right. We'll go ahead and deal with what we're going to see next, and then move from there. The enemy was reinforced and drew up in our front, supported by a battery of artillery and some cavalry. They were about to engage them again when we were ordered by General Johnson to fall back. We'll deal with that in just a little bit. So they enter their first action here, and they get a tablet right here. There's a great letter, and I should have made a copy of it, I guess, and brought it. But there's a great letter from Chalmers himself. And like the last years of his life, I believe he dies in 1898, I think. And the park is established, of course, in 1894, and Reed starts making the preparations for tablets and all that, contacting veterans and so on in 1895, 1896. So he contacts Chalmers, and Chalmers sends him a letter, and he says, basically, we move forward and so and we attack the 18th Wisconsin camp, put a tablet there, he says. And then he goes on and says, we withdrawn, marched around the Bark Road, blah, 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 and went in, attacked Stewart's brigade, put a tablet there, he says. And then he says, we moved on forward and we hit Lawman's line and so on, put a tablet there. Chalmers is, by this time, a congressman, of course, and is telling Reed, this is where I want tablets to my brigade. And everywhere that he has a tablet today, Chalmers had said, put a tablet there. So Chalmers said, put a tablet here. So you can see the importance of this position here. All right, any questions on Chalmers' first engagement? All right, after he routs the 18th Wisconsin, of course, they move on forward. We're going to go down into the ravine, into the next hill. And I don't think you can see the peach orchard area from there. During the dead of winter, you can see a lot farther. But looking on the map, you know, it's not too far at all down in there. So let's And out.
How often people confuse the Army of the Tennessee with the Army of Tennessee. All right, Mary Lou Ratner, go.
Trying not to find out. You had a bank down there. You had to come down in your butt.
If we watch the dog, he could probably tell us. Seen several burnout logs and so on. I think the park just did a control burn last year, 2 years ago or something like that. We are right here. Sun's reflecting off of it. We crossed this branch of Locust Grove Branch. I'm not, you know, Mona and I were talking about it. I don't know if it was that deep. That's a pretty deep creek for Shiloh. I'm thinking, of course, it would have been filled with more water because of the rain and so on, but I'm not sure it would have been banks that steep because you don't see banks that steep around here that much. So I'm thinking it might have been channeled, you know, and dredged a little bit by the CCC. Trying to think of other areas on the park. Most of the time they're much wider floodplains and shallower creeks, rather than you know, a shallow floodplain in a deep ditch. Even Locust Grove Branch last year, remember, I don't think was quite as big a creek as that was. It wasn't quite that dramatic. So I don't know, but the point is they had to cross things like that, and you know, a couple of us fell in the water, got our feet wet and so on. It dawned on me one day, I might have told y'all this before, we think of in terms of movies and so on, we, you know, and even Park Service films and so on, we watch them and soldiers get to a mud puddle or a creek or a whatever and they just trudge right through like manly men, you know, and trudge. If I was a soldier and I was going into action here at what, 9:30 or so in the morning, and I knew I had another day or another 2 days of fighting, I wouldn't want to get my feet wet because in those brogans and socks that they had, wool socks and so on, they're going to be just as miserable and blisters and so on with their feet as we would with our feet. So they're not going to just trudge through things just like, you know, you see on the movies and so on. Our buddy here did. You just went right through it. But you know, they're going to try to. The point is, when they come to an obstacle like that, I would have tried to go over a log or find the best place I could to cross or jump it or something rather than just go knee deep because you're going to be miserable the rest of the day. So we're kind of on the high ground north of that branch right in here. If you look right at the tip of where this is through to the peach orchard, it's not probably even a quarter of a mile. It's hardly anything through there. And Hurlbut's position, you'll remember, is initially on the south side of the peach orchard, right at the Hamburg-Purdy Road, and skirmishers are going to be forward from that, of course. So Union skirmishers are just not far out there, and Chalmer skirmishers are in front of him. So they're going to exchange some pretty long-range fire just between the two right there. And then, of course, we'll see what happens. Chalmers tells us that, let's see, brought up the 5th Mississippi and the 52nd Tennessee. The enemy was reformed and drew up in our front, supported by a battery of artillery and some cavalry. That's probably Mann's battery that is sent forward to Stewart's position, that's firing probably over Chalmers' head at this point toward Robertson's battery back in Prentice's camps back there. And some cavalry. We were about to engage them again when we were ordered by General Johnston to fall back, which was done. Now this is the point that Johnston, back in the 18th Wisconsin camp, figures out that, okay, there are a lot more enemy over there that we need to attack, and he starts his movement, his wheeling motion to hook that Union left flank, but then he gets word that there are more Federals over here. And that's basically Samuel Lockett, who has been out to scout the Confederate right. He comes back and says there's a division, really there's a brigade over there, David Stewart's brigade, which we're going to meet later. But he comes back and tells Johnston. Johnston says, you know, I got to do something about that. So he thinks, what have I got in position to do anything with? And his reserves are far back. So what he does, he takes Johnston and Jackson. Jackson is on Chalmers' extreme left. He takes Chalmers and Jackson back out of line and takes them back the route we're going to take across this little creek again that I didn't tell y'all we were going to go right back across it because I knew you wouldn't come across, and then you would have been sad at the end of the day that I didn't make that one little part that Chalmers Brigade did. I would have completed it all if I'd done that, so I didn't tell you that. So we're going to cross that creek right back again, all the way back to the Bark Road that we were just on, and go back around, and we'll deal with that in just a little bit. The idea is to create a new Confederate right flank in order to deal with Stewart or that division or whatever's over there, and these two brigade positions will be replaced with the reserve that is moving forward, and that's in the form of Breckinridge's brigades, both Winfield Statham's brigade and John Bowen's brigade, which are going to move through this area and take the position of Chalmers and Jackson, while Chalmers and Jackson are farther to the right out there. So we were ordered by General Johnson to fall back, which was done. The enemy, supposing we were in retreat, fired several volleys of musketry at us, whereupon we faced about, returned their fire, and received, and they ceased firing. Being commanded here to remain here until we would receive further orders, we rested about half an hour when a guide, Mr. Lafayette was sent to conduct us farther to the right, where we learned that the enemy was attempting to turn our left flank. So this is the movement that's going on. When I did the book and read this, I looked for Lafayetteville. Later on in the report, Chalmers says something about him again.
Crazy.
Something about Mr. Lafayetteville of McNairy County. Basically what he says. I looked in the 1860 census in McNairy County, and I couldn't find any Lafayetteville or anything. He could have moved in afterwards. Mona says she found more about him. Where'd you get
in
the
the
information?
1850 census, he was living in the Purdy area with a Patrick Braden as a farm hand.
Okay.
The 1860 census, he doesn't show up. Then in 1870, he shows up living in Holly Springs, which I wondered if it's a connection with Chalmers.
It could have been, yeah.
He was born in Tennessee in 1829. In 1870, he shows up in Holly Springs living as a laborer, married to a Sarah Neighbors, and they have a baby, Lizzie. In 1880, neither he or Sarah shows up, but Lizzie's showing up living with her grandparents. So they must have died between 70 and 80. But the 1860 census doesn't show him, but he could have been skipped over at that time.
Could have. Did you find it? Is it VEAL?
VEAL.
Really?
Yeah, and that name's nowhere in McNairy County, and don't know where in Tennessee he come from.
Yeah, I didn't go back to look at 1850 or anything like that. I just looked in 1860 and basically dropped it from there. But that's interesting that he's in the 1850, and we know he was, verifies that he was a man that was
did
around.
Chalmers come through Purdy area?
No.
How he hooked up in Purdy.
Well, I don't know.
We can't figure that out.
Now, a division of Polk's Corps is in the Purdy area, Bethel Springs area, so he could have come with them, tagged along with them, or something. I don't know, but that's interesting. Glad you found out more information about him. All right, any other?
Because Chalmers talks about Veal several times in his report. I thought this guy must have been really important to him.
It's also down in this area. If you remember, I think 3 years ago, right at the tail end, we kept looking for the mythical ammunition. What do we call it? The
Powder, whatever.
Powder magazine.
Yeah. And it was dark, and we had flashlights that wouldn't work and all that, and we were traipsing around down in. It was right down in here, and we never did find anything. But you found it later on, didn't you?
Jerry and Tony found it the next morning and showed it to me the following year.
Yeah. So it's down there.
down there.
But
Do we know why Chalmers would have been picked to go clear to the right? Is it strictly, was he healthier? Was he?
I hadn't seen any indication of that. It's just the way the thing
Physically laid out.
lays out that when Bragg's Corps is deployed, Ruggles Division is on the left, and that's Anderson, Pond, and Gibson, and Withers Division is on the right, and that's Jackson, Chalmers, and Gladden. Originally, and Chalmers talks about this, Gladden was supposed to be held in reserve in rear of Jackson and Chalmers in the original lineup out there. But when they figured out that Shaver's brigade of Hardy's Corps, the initial line, the front line, didn't stretch far enough, that's when they brought Gladden out of the reserve there and pushed him up to the front line. And that's when Chalmers says he still doesn't reach to the line, so they moved him out just a little bit farther. And that's another reason we didn't go out that far, down into Lick Creek and so on this morning. But they will put him in echelon behind Gladden, and the idea is to plug this gap. We don't want to leave any opening for the Federals to be able to get out, or even worse, to turn our flank. And Chalmers talks about this somewhere, talking about, we were afraid they were going to turn our flank. Yeah, he talks about where we learned that the enemy were attempting to turn our flank. So they're really worried about that. So they're trying to plug this gap, and they're shooting at it. Make sure that nothing gets around there. So I don't think it was anything that Chalmers is especially gifted or good, that
because he was already here, and that's a big deal to go all the way back and down and come up again.
Yeah. Oh, you're talking about going around the back. I thought you were talking about an initial deployment. No, this is the closest thing Johnson has that he can right now move. This is the closest asset that he has that he can move around there and replace them with others that are moving forward. Similar to when Bragg makes this movement into Kentucky in the summer of 1862, when he moves from Tupelo to basically Chattanooga to launch the Kentucky campaign. With the loss of the Memphis and Charleston, of course, they can't move overland, so they have to go down to Mobile and up to Montgomery and Atlanta and Chattanooga, utilizing the railroad system. So what he does, he sends the Mobile garrison ahead and replaces that garrison with the tail end of the troops from Tupelo. So you're playing musical chairs, you're moving some and replacing them with others coming up. So this is the only thing that he has to utilize right at this point. All right, anything else? I'm sorry, but we got to cross this street. Learning, R.F. Learning, I believe, and he wrote Reed after Reed wrote his book, Battle of Shiloh and Organizations Engaged, and he said, really good book and all that, but said there's one era when we moved across to reposition ourselves. We didn't go back to the Bark Road, as you say. We actually went north of Locust Grove Branch, which is right here. So he's saying we went just north of Locust Grove Branch, which is what Wiley Sword argues Chalmers and Jackson should have done. Johnson should have done. But I don't. Moving by the right flank, we filed to the right directly south until we crossed the ravine behind us. When we reached the summit of the hill, we moved southeast direction of our right, rested on the edge of Lick Creek bottom. Here again, we were ordered to rest. There's really no way to tell. Reed obviously thought that they went back to the Bark Road and went across, and who are we to argue with Reed? So that's what we're going to do, and we're going to just keep on going, because it's hard to see the next position that Chalmers and Jackson take are south of Locust Grove Branch. So how if they went north and then repositioned south and then cross back over to the north? Plus the Federals have skirmishers south of Locust Grove Branch, so I don't see how they could have moved in rear of the Federal skirmishers and then moved back south and then move back north. I just don't see it. So we're going to take the Bark Road route. What we'll do also is go this way. If we had moved a little farther to the east and come in like I wanted to, of course, Chalmers Tablet's right there. As Mona was talking about in Smith's report, the swamps and so on. So we'll just move back kind of the way we should have come to give you a little better indication of what the terrain is like as they cross. Here we'll head over to the east side. It was back in the ravine out here that they dropped their blankets, and what did they say? Something dropped their blankets and other things, and I don't imagine they saw them again. So whatever you wanted to keep, you better keep on you. I don't remember if it was in that one or this one. Somewhere they talked about we dropped our blankets and so on. There's an account after the battle that, of course, the Union soldiers just start fanning out, looking at their tourists, looking at everything. And one of them talks about he comes across this line of knapsacks just out in the middle of the woods where some Confederate regiment had unleashed knapsacks and put them on the ground and moved off and never saw them again. And I'm sure you had a good time going through all of them and finding what all was in them. All right, everybody doing all right?
Yep.
Good. Okay, we ready to go?
Yep.
Okay. They have to unlimber the guns and let them down by prolong rope. And that's the rope that makes a figure 8 on the back of the thing, And when they get to the other side, they have to drag them up the hill, and they have to carry horse by horse. Unhitch the horses and carry them one by one and all that. And it's just amazing that battery could keep up with the infantry. And going through something like this, you try to find the best road you could, but there's several battery commanders that say, our brigades were places that we couldn't go on road. We're right around the corner, a little farther when we veered off and of course went through Park Road, picked up the dog, and all that. But we're going to take the route here, Bark Road, which evidently, according to Reed, Chalmers, and Jackson, you can make a whole lot quicker time, of course, marching in column along roads than you can marching in line of battle and just moving across. She's sticking with us.
She's just scouting that little
she's scouting with us, I think. So we're going to, as best we know, we're going to follow the Bark Road until Jackson peels off, and a little quicker than Chalmers does, of course, because he's in the rear and he will be on the right, or on the left. Chalmers has a little bit farther to go and we'll move in. Last year you are with us, aren't you? Last year we went to Girardi's Tablet, which was with Jackson's brigade. And you remember we crossed Locust Grove Branch and went up this real steep hill. We also went over to Gage's battery position, which we're going to come in from a different direction. We go to the same place, we're going to come in from a different direction. And then we're going to follow the route of the brigade right down that hill and on across to where their next engagement is. So time and space, relatively little fighting, lots of movement for this brigade, at least this service. Be careful, they may left
10 minutes.
the line, the Eastern Corinth Road and started the counter march. How long? Less than an hour. So I mean, we're not talking too long that they're going to be out of action. Of course, they can hear what's going on to the north. And I'm sure we're thinking, some of them, if you're not in the 10th Mississippi, you haven't really engaged yet. I mean, you've done all this. We've been all around the world in 80 days almost, and we haven't even engaged yet, except for the 10th Mississippi. But they're fixing to get engaged here. Let's show people where we are on the map. Kind of explain what we're doing.
Dad,
All right.
back.
You got that, man.
Of course, they make a northeasterly movement forward. They go into action here at the 18th Wisconsin, proceed farther, and then turn around back, I think, to the Eastern Corinth Road, back to the Bark Road, and to right here. And if you look on these trailhead maps, there are historic roads, and this is, by all accounts, the historic road here. You see another one just back to our west there. As Chalmers leads the way and Jackson follows him, Jackson will peel off and move forward where Girardi's battery tablet is that we've already talked about. Chalmers will go farther, all the way really to where you can already start seeing it going really down. That's going down into the valley of Lick Creek in Locust Grove Branch, and Chalmers, the cavalry, Clanton's cavalry, Alabama cavalry, is out on his right flank, finding where the flank is and all that. Slow down, fella. And of course we'll be alerted that you are now on, as far as you can go, really on high ground without getting down into the valley, into the creek. And so Chalmers will deploy here and start to move forward. Let's see if he says anything much about what he's doing here. Moving by the right flank, we file to the right directly south until we cross the ravine behind the so-and-so edge of Lick Creek bottom. Here again we were ordered to rest. This is historic, it's what we're doing right now. Which we did for some half hour. We never rest for a half hour. But when we were again started forward, a few skirmishers of the enemy, having secretly advanced close to our left, fired upon the 52nd Tennessee Regiment. This is as they're going down into the valley of Locust Grove Branch. Some of these skirmishers are sent out by Stewart. They're skirmishers of the 54th Ohio, 55th Illinois. That actually, I think 3 companies move actually across Locust Grove Branch. And the 52nd Tennessee, this is all forward ahead. Breaks, broken, fled in most shameful confusion, repeated efforts to rally it. Without exception, only 2 companies actually fight with the 5th Mississippi from there on. So we won't have the 52nd Tennessee really with us from here on. So, and that goes on down, and then of course when orders were received from General Withers to move on, skirmishers were thrown forward under Major Whitfield, drive the enemy before us toward Pittsburgh, so so-and-so, and then it gets into the fighting on farther forward. All right, so we're going into additional private land. Of course, the landowner is very generous to give us permission. When I asked him, he said, wow, I've never had anybody ask me to go on the land before, so I appreciate you asking, and most people just go on and don't ask, I guess. But at any rate, we'll come out at the tablet that recently. Tell us about this group, the Shiloh Discussion Group, or is it
SCV camp.
the SCV camp?
And some help took it upon them, and we sandblasted it, and then primed it, and then put silver on them for different days of doing this, and then put the red on it.
If you remember last year when we were here, it was all rusted and just awful looking.
And did Giardi's too.
Yeah, the two out here. These are off park property, of course, and hadn't been painted in years and years and years. So I'm anxious to see how good it looks there. So
We took a group photo there last year, so we'll take another one this year.
yeah, well at Girardi's we did. Or did we take one at Gage's too?
No, it was
Giardi's.
Out in the field. This one's in the
right.
woods. So.
Well, we'll do one at the other one this time. So.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Everybody ready? Made our counter march all the way to here, and we've gone in. We're right here, and actually this map is older. This is now parkland, as well as some of this in here, and all of this over here is now parkland. That's part of that Civil War Trust, 490 something acres or so that was, a couple of years ago, 2012, the anniversary. So we're back at Chalmer's position. Of course, this tablet denotes Gage's position. This battery was engaged here about 10:30 a.m. April 6th. Its next position was on the Hamburg-Purdy Road. So, I mean, look at the terrain that this battery is going to have to go through. Chalmer's Brigade, as we talked about, moves off the Bart Road into this area. They will start more eastward than anything. They really get kind of discombobulated a little bit. And when we get over to this tablet, actually on the River Road, the tablet is kind of facing northeastward. So they're attacking kind of that direction. And this is the famous incident, of course, somebody mentioned, I don't remember who, with Colonel Mumford and Johnson. I'm convinced, and there's plenty of evidence to show this, that Johnson leaves the 18th Wisconsin camp and rides over south of Locust Grove Branch to at least Jackson's position, where Girardi's tablet over there is. No evidence that he actually comes all the way to here to Chalmers' position, but in open territory you can see from there to here. And this is where they have that conversation that as they're watching Chalmers go over the hill, I think is the wordage that they're talking about, and I'm sure it's this hill that we're about to go over. Johnson says that checkmates him. And Mumford says, well, I'm not a good chess player, but I don't see it. And Johnson says, yep, that checkmates him. Of course it didn't. But Johnson is thinking now, he already had he had turned that Union left flank. As we talked about earlier, is in the 18th Wisconsin camp, he thought he turned that Union left flank. He didn't. And he has to unfold this new right wing out, and now he thinks he has it turned again. At this time he does find the Union left flank, but he hasn't gotten it turned yet, and in fact he never will actually turn it. He will drive it back, but he won't turn it and be able to do what he was talking about all day long, which is to move the Union Army up into the swamps and destroy them there. Let's look and see what Reed has on here. Yeah, you can see that Gage's position here. This is where we are, and you see Chalmers here that has moved just right in across this position, down this range of hills. And of course, everybody didn't go down right here. They're in line of battle, and they're going to stretch 4 regiments and 2 companies wide, and so they're going to be up and down this range of hills. But we're going to go down right here, and we'll come across and come out in the McCullough Field area where Chalmers' next tablet is. And of course, that'll be the fighting in Stewart's area there. We're going to make sure that we don't have anything we need to particularly talk about here. Skirmishers are thrown out, gradually wheeling the whole line. Develop the enemy concealed behind the fence and thick undergrowth. All this is up Stewart's position. So, all right. Any questions here?
It must be a really good fence, because he even talks about the fence.
Yeah, fence. Yeah. All right, good job, Mona.
Thank you.
Good job on that.
Well, I'll pass it along to the rest of the guys.
All right. Okay.
Oh, took the whole crew.
Warning here. To follow the route, we're going to follow it, of course. But I've never been to the bottom of this hill. This is one of the areas I've been here and I've been over there, but I've never been between the two. So I'm not sure what we're going to find, but
Getting ready to find out.
we're going to find it out.
Take your time.
We'll coming back up.
That's what I mean. You said they went down this hill.
Again, imagine yourself carrying a musket and trying to maintain at least some semblance of order. See the slope, I don't know if it's down that way.